Hello and welcome to my tarot channel. So today's reading is, what is your biggest fear? So pick a pile 1 through 4 and you're going to pick your pile intuitively, and I'm going to do the reading intuitively, and we're going to find out what your biggest fear is. So this is pile number 1, and you can choose by the stone or the cards themselves. Pile number 2, pile number 3, and pile number 4. So choose your pile by either the stone or the cards themselves, and you can take your time and you can pause the video if you want. This is piles 1 through 4. So pile 1, pile 2, pile 3, and pile 4, and you're going to choose intuitively. So whichever pile you feel is drawing you in, it is what is your biggest fear, and I'm going to start with pile number 1. So for pile number 1, we have this one is you. So if you're a man especially, this would just apply to you. If you're not a female, then this could be just possibly a person that you may know, or it could just still be you. Either way, it doesn't really matter, but this is just for who the reading is being done for. So if you're afraid of illness and poverty, I mean, that's everyone's biggest fears. Maybe indecision. You're a person that likes to go and go. You don't like to stop that much. You don't like the feeling of being trapped. You don't like the feeling of being trapped. You're a go, go, go type of person. You also are afraid of illness and poverty. So those would be your greatest fears. This reading is very straightforward, I would say. You don't like that feeling of being undecided. You don't like to take the time to sit around and reflect all the time on those types of things. Those are the things that frighten you, is just illness and poverty in general. Those are your biggest fears: becoming ill, becoming poor, a feeling of being trapped. That's something you try not to reflect on. You try not to reflect on your fears that much. Those are, necessarily, those are pretty common fears, but those are your greatest fears. So you might be the type of person that doesn't like germs very much and stuff like that. You try not to reflect too much on the type of things that frighten you or scare you in general. So these are your greatest fears, and they're pretty common. I mean, getting sick and then becoming poor and that type of thing. You're not someone that likes a lot of, sitting around or downtime or reflecting on those types of things. You don't like that feeling of indecision, or sometimes you can feel kind of undecided, but you don't like that. You just don't like to reflect on your greatest fears that much. But they're pretty common ones. Becoming ill and then becoming poor, illness and poverty. You might be a bit of a germphobe type of person, but those are your biggest fears. And they're not necessarily that uncommon either, and it's pretty straightforward reading. So those are your biggest fears. Doesn't mean they're happening. It's just a reading about what your biggest fears are. They're obviously not happening. It was just showing this is you, and these are your greatest fears. So now you know if you didn't know. Alright, so for pile number 2, what are your biggest fears? Fears to overcome. These are things to overcome. These are fears to overcome. So, alright, we'll move on to pile number 2. So for pile number 2, you might be someone that's not that foolish, and that you might be someone that likes to go on new journeys and isn't really scared that easily. A playful person, perhaps. So I'm not really seeing a lot about fears here. Like I said, you might be a person that doesn't get scared that easily, doesn't have that many great fears. You might be a person that's more positive, a more go for go for it type of person, a more fun-loving person. Perhaps you're a little afraid of hard work type of thing. I don't know who would be. Maybe you're the type of person that doesn't like handouts as much and likes to like fall on your butt and then get back up and keep going type of thing is what the kind of message I'm getting from this. You might not be someone that has tons of huge fears. You're more a person that tries to live in the moment type of person and just keep going. So you might be someone that doesn't have massive fears, but whatever your fears are, maybe you just don't like handouts that much and you're a little bit all over the place, like a jack of all trades type of person. You might not be the most settled down type of person. So as far as your biggest fear, it would just be minor things. You're someone that just keeps going and having new beginnings all the time. More of a jack of trades all type of person, a person that maybe doesn't accept help easily type of person. So as far as your biggest fears, you probably don't have like major ones, major fears or phobias. You're just a person that just lives type of person. So that is actually quite interesting, and that is your reading for pile number 2. And I would say it's fairly a good message. There's nothing really scary here or anything like that. Maybe you just don't scare easily. Maybe you're the one that comes off kind of weird or jokey or scary, and you're a little bit not necessarily afraid of, you just don't like handouts. And when it comes to like learning a skill, you just kind of go with what you know type of person. So there isn't any like major fear necessarily. It's just maybe needing help is something that scares you a bit or something like that. Needing help is something that you're not easily, it's not something that you easily ask for ever really, and you're not like someone that gets scared easily, and you're someone that likes new beginnings, so, and likes new things probably. So you probably don't have a lot of major fears. You just probably get a little more nervous or upset when people maybe offer you help or try to show you something type of person. So that's something you might not need to get over. It's always okay to accept any kind of help, and it's always okay to learn anything new. Yeah, and for someone that does actually kind of like new beginnings, maybe this is a bit of a new beginning for you right now at this phase of your life. It's okay to learn new things and to accept help and things like that. Those aren't things that you need to fear necessarily. I wouldn't say they're your greatest fears. It's just probably you're more the type of person that just goes and maybe does your own thing type of person. So, you know, those aren't things that you need to be afraid of. So for whatever your biggest fear is, maybe your biggest fear is coming off that way, or, you know, being seen that way, but it kind of is how you are. You're the kind of person that falls down and gets up and just keeps going and goes for a new beginning. So it's always okay to slow down. It's okay to accept help and things like that, and those aren't things you need to fear. So you're probably not someone that has big major fears either, but it's okay to accept those things, and those aren't things that you need to be afraid of and you shouldn't be afraid of. So that is your reading for pile number 2. Alright, for pile number 3, we're going to do pile number 3 now. And if this is your pile, this is the little stone that you chose. And you got honor and recognition of labor. So maybe being dishonorable or having people not notice your work would be something that would upset or frighten you. And you are afraid of being betrayed. You're afraid of suffering. You are afraid of aggression. Aggression, that feeling of being betrayed. You might be afraid of people that you feel like are really intuitive. And I wouldn't say you're necessarily afraid of people that are independent. Perhaps maybe just assertive, aggressive, intuitive people perhaps bother you or frighten you because you're afraid of aggression itself, betrayal and suffering. Those two main things would be the things that you're afraid of. So attacks, being attacked, having your honor attacked, not being recognized for your work type of thing. So these are the things that you fear: not being recognized for your work, losing your honor, being attacked, being betrayed, suffering and aggression. or suffering through aggression. These are the type of things you might be slightly more just honest, normal, honorable, working hard type of person. Those would be normal fears, things that people would normally fear. So those are your biggest fears, and betrayal in general. You don't like dishonorable people. You don't like overly aggressive and dishonorable people. Most people don't. So as far as your biggest fears, I would say they're fairly normal. You might just be someone that gets a little more defensive than other people perhaps about things like that, but those would be your greatest fears. Aggression, betrayal. You might be a little bit more of a defensive person. So, you know, it's okay to like let people in. You're just someone that's really careful about probably who you let in. You know, a little bit judgmental perhaps, but that's okay because you're afraid of the overly aggressiveness. You're afraid of being betrayed. You're afraid of suffering. These are just normal things. The suffering, we all suffer though. That spirit of joy thing, there's joy through suffering, new beginnings and things like that. So, I mean, that's always a good thing to remember. And we all feel let down sometimes too, but the aggressiveness, the betrayal, and the suffering, those are like the main things that you are afraid of. And that is not necessarily strange at all. That's quite common. Common fears. Just don't let anything like that overtake you, because then you end up being like a paranoid person, obviously. People aren't out to get you. They're not after you type of thing, obviously. And you're obviously an honorable person, and you just like being recognized for your work. Maybe like a regular workaday type of person that doesn't like overly, you know, aggressive or, you know, dishonest or unloyal type of people. That's normal for, you know, everyone to a degree, so don't get carried away in that. I would say just keep doing you and everything. And, you know, the betrayal thing, everyone's afraid of that. No one likes being hurt. No one likes suffering. And those are your biggest fears. Those are things sometimes we go through in life, you know, or things that we maybe already have gone through. Especially if you're a little bit older, you might be wiser, so you don't have to worry as much. So you shouldn't let fears like that get you carried away, because you already know, and you already know who's who and how things are. So that's all I really have to say for pile number 3. And we'll move on to pile number 4 now. And so for pile number 4, you got the Scythe. So disappointment and death. So you're afraid of death and early death. That's what your fear is, death itself and early death. That one's very straightforward. I probably wouldn't even have to go through here. But and then you have judgment and the moon, illusions and fears. So you might be a person that contemplates. You contemplate too much. You live in illusion too much. You get carried away with that fear. You get carried away with your fear of death or an early death. These are things that you're thinking about too much that you don't need to be thinking about. You might be afraid of other people's deaths as well. Death itself is something you fear, but in life there are cycles. There's birth, death, and rebirth. So that is your greatest fear. Most people don't even have their mind on that much. They don't sit there and think, one day, you know, I'm gonna die, or I'm dying right now, or, you know, this person's passing away all the time, or who's about to pass away type of thing. People don't usually have that on their mind. So your fear is just a regular, normal, primal fear. I mean, everyone fears that deep down. So that is your biggest fear. You're someone that loves life probably and doesn't want that on their mind ever. And so for you, I would say that would be something that probably causes you some panic. Anything that has to do with darkness, maybe. It's okay to face your own darkness, your own, you know, have your own moments and everything else, but the thing that you fear and you love life so much, you're like, but you know, it's just normal for everyone to fear that. I mean, unless you're like really old, you're going through something, that's not something that you should normally have on your mind necessarily. It's, I would say, just a normal fear that people have that's never in the forefront of their mind, but your biggest fear is death. And death itself, or maybe just other people passing away too, bothers you a lot, people that you're close to. Those are things that you don't like to face and things that you're afraid of. But in life, there are cycles, like I said. People, come and go. People pass. It's really sad. And as far as ourselves, we just need to watch our health and everything else like that in a normal and healthy and constructive way, and not focus on that. Just focus on the beauty of life and the rebirth and the reasons things happen and stuff. Your fear is just a really common fear, and it's just death itself. Most of these were fairly common fears, and that is your fear. It's just passing or having other people pass. That doesn't mean you're passing right now. Clearly you're fine. Everything is fine. That's just one of your fears, and it is a primal fear, and it is a very common fear, but it is your biggest fear. So you might not like dark things and stuff like that. You might be a very life-centered type of person, and that's okay to be like that. That is just your biggest fear and something to overcome. And it's not after you or anything like that, so you're fine. That is just your biggest fear. And that is your reading for pile number 4.